Sensitive topics. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the official policies or position of Met Radio, Met Media, or Metropolitan State University of Denver. This podcast may include discussions of sensitive or potentially triggering topics. Viewer discretion is advised.
Mature themes. This podcast may contain discussions of mature or sensitive topics that may not be suitable for all audiences. Strategies, suggestions, or opinions shared in this podcast are intended for informational purposes only and do not constitute medical, psychological, or professional advice. Viewers are encouraged to consult a qualified medical professional before acting on any information this podcast may contain. If you are in crisis or need immediate support, please contact a licensed professional or emergency services in your area. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi guys, my name is Livette, and this is Poli-Pop Talk. Ben couldn't make it today, but we're going to get right into it. I haven't seen you since last year, so Happy New Year, first of all. I'm not used to just being like one-on-one on camera, so I do have a friend in the back. Her name's Itzel. Shout out to Itzel. We'll get a shot of her so y'all can see her. Willful ignorance, I want to touch on that. I want to touch on Susie Wiles and the Vanity Fair. I don't know if y'all caught that, but like all these like crazy pictures of the Trump administration. So I want to review that. I'll put in, obviously, pictures up so y'all can see them. But, yeah, let's get right into it. Also, and I also want to touch on inflation today because inflation has just always been, like, talked about. And for a while there, we didn't have any numbers for 2025 because of the government shutdown. But now that the government's up and running and the end of 2025 has already passed, we will see inflation rates become available. So I just want to talk about that. Alrighty, so if we start with definitions, and we're going to start with what in the word, we're going to start with some definitions that you're kind of hearing a lot, which is like fascism, and I've heard willful ignorance a lot. I don't know if other people have heard that, but I think that it's important for people to know what that is, to kind of put a definition to what you see people actively doing when it comes to being so loyal to their parties. And also what inflation is, like what the definition of inflation is, and just like little things just to fill in the gaps that may or may not be there. But if we start off with willful ignorance, according to Psychology Today, it is avoiding information that does not reinforce their pre-established beliefs. So you'll see that with people stating that they're Christians, but then continue to support Trump despite the SA charges, despite the felonies, despite the crude language and behaviors that he's displayed, things like that. Because that doesn't reinforce the idea that he's a good Christian. So if he's not a good Christian, if they're supporting him, then that makes them not good Christians. So they'd rather just ignore those facts and many other facts. I don't know if anyone caught the Vanity Fair article, but it was called The Eye of the Hurricane, and it was basically profiles on the whole Trump administration. The most important one, or the one the media kind of took and ran with, was Susie Wiles. She is the chief of staff for the Trump administration. She is the first woman to be chief of staff for Trump. So what they had interpreted her words as, I'll put obviously the actual words right here, but what they were saying is that she called Trump an alcoholic, or alluded to the fact that he has a personality of an alcoholic, which is because her father was an alcoholic. So she said that she's familiar with dealing with those types of people. Or specifically, she said people with strong personalities, men with strong personalities. But the media took that and was like, Trump acts like an alcoholic. And then Trump came out and he was like, yeah, I see why she would say that. I could agree if I drank. So it's almost like whenever you try to insult the man, he can't even he doesn't take the insults. If it's within his administration, if they're trying to pass like any judgment or insult him, he'll just be like, yeah, they have a point, just to make himself not look bad. But anyways, too much into that. But her father was an alcoholic, so she knows how to deal with men with big personalities, is what the direct quote is. And then a couple other things that were happening towards the end of the year, obviously the Epstein files. We were supposed to get the full copies of the Epstein files by December, and we didn't get the entire copies. A lot of it was redacted. Like we had said in our previous episode, it was going to be redacted. So now we actually see how redacted that information is. We'll see pictures of people like Bill Clinton. There was pictures of Michael Jackson that became public. And there was one, I think it was Michael Jackson and Diana Ross, I'll put it right here. But it was them and then her, and then I think their children. So then somebody had the original photo, and they're like, actually, this is a real photo, so I'm not quite sure why that's redacted. So it made, like, the severity of the redactions not really seem legitimate, right? Like, they're making it seem like they should just redact, like, everybody. But the thing is, I think Pam Bondi needed to actually come out and explain each of her redactions. But that didn't end up happening because within the new year, when that was supposed to happen in January, we attacked Venezuela. So now the whole attention's on Venezuela and other countries, now Iran and Greenland and all these other things, and Mexico. Like, Trump has threatened so many countries. So we're not really focusing on the Epstein files anymore. People didn't really understand that they were supposed to be explained, every single redaction. So now we're looking past that because there's war. Have you heard the Republicans talking about how they shouldn't be called Nazis or fascist or compared to Hitler or the Gestapo? All things that you've heard them be called. But the definition of fascism, I think people kind of just throw that around. Kind of like in the 70s, they used to throw around communist a lot. Like, if you had anything that wasn't patriotic or like a patriotic thought, then you would be called like a communist or whatever. So I think fascism is that new word for us in the 2020s. So I just want to make sure everyone knows what that means. Fascism, the actual definition of fascism, is an authoritarian and nationalistic right-wing system of government and social organization. That's kind of a big definition, so we're going to break it down. Authoritarian itself is meaning favoring or enforcing strict obedience to authority. So basically a strict government. So meaning if you don't abide by the government, then there's strict consequences. Death, imprisonment. That's the first one. Nationalistic right wing. So nationalistic means a strong identification with one's own nation and vigorous support for its interests, especially at the exclusion or deterrent of interest of other nations. So that's also kind of a hardy definition. Basically, it means that identifying so strong with your nation, being so loyal to your nation, even if that means supporting your nation or advancing your nation at the expense of other nations. So that's a good definition to know. But I also mentioned inflation, but what is inflation? You always hear about it. And a lot of times it could be as simple as describing it as just a change in how much something costs the consumer based on, actually, it's hard to kind of say what it's based on because if we look at studies from like 2020, there was like pricing surges for basic household needs, eggs, water, stuff like that. Because some brand started to like surge the prices on everyday like household items, and so it kind of messed up the way like inflation was calculated during the pandemic because these corporations took advantage of the consumers because they knew that you don't really have another choice. It's either us or nobody, or you're going to risk going to multiple stores and risk getting your family sick, right? So they kind of knew their advantage there. And so anyways, the impacts of that on inflation, I just wanted to mention that it really did impact inflation. And also, so did the stimulus checks. I remember taking, I think it was macroeconomics, and he had explained to us, we got the stimulus checks, I think, that year. And my professor was explaining to us that that's what makes inflation worse, because no one has ever stopped spending money. We never got the chance to actually, like, live through the pandemic and stop spending money because we were given money so that it would still be pumped into the economy. So the economy had no idea what people were actually going through, because it seemed like they had money because of how much was getting used. Anyways, just a side note. Inflation rate. So a lot of people want to compare Biden and want to compare Trump's administration when it comes to talking about inflation. So we can definitely do that. According to usainflation.com, I know, it's really hard to find an inflation chart, but I did find one, and I'll put it like really big on the screen so y'all can see it. But it's not from usainflation.com, but I'll put the source as well. Anyways, so if we look at Biden, so from 2021 to 2025, it's going to be Biden. And then from 2025 to now, it's kind of going to be monthly compared to yearly with Biden. But basically with Biden, the highest we've seen Biden's inflation rate was going to be in 2022 at 9.1%. I'm not an economist, so I don't know why. I welcome any economist to come, please explain to me why. I want to know. Because then by the end of that year, so that was the middle of that year, it started at 7.55 2022 under Biden administration. The highest was in the middle of that year in June at 9.1. And then at the end of the year, it went down to 6.5. So he did make a change, but that's still the highest we've seen. I have from 2017 to 2025. So at least from there. And then if we look at Trump's previous administration, since the 2025 numbers, we'll go over those. But Trump's previous administration, the highest number he had was actually just 2.9. And whether being a Trump supporter or not being a Trump supporter, I think it's really important to just talk about the numbers and the facts. I think a lot of people want to say, like, oh, like, just talk bad about one person or the other just to talk bad about them. But it's really easy to talk bad about someone with the facts. It's easier to talk bad about certain people by telling the truth than it would be by lying about others. So this is just the truth. But in 2025, we'll see that it started at 3% inflation rate. June was at 2.7%, and then he ended 2025 at the same 2.7%. So the only judgment I kind of have about that is that it didn't really change. Like, if we look at how much he's bragged about, like, fixing inflation and it being gone or, like, so low, really, I think it's 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 0.3% higher or lower than it started. So when you say that's, like, a big change or he's helped it so much, he really hasn't as of now. But we still have 3 years to go. But we're still going to keep up and make sure. But anyways... the World Health Organization declared a national emergency in May of 2020, I believe, and then it ended in May of 2023. So just to, like, compare those numbers as well. So you'll see a year before COVID ended is when we've seen Biden with the highest inflation rates. I don't know if that has any correlation, but I just thought that was nice to throw in there. All right. Anyways, what else has been going on? Nicki Minaj went on Turning Point USA, and that was interesting. So I think we talked about Cardi B on one of our last episodes, and I said how I've always loved Cardi B just because she's so outspoken. I'm not really into, like, rap music all that much, but I do appreciate Cardi B and her personality. She's on social media, and she's just very personable. But Nicki Minaj on Turning Point USA, the whole Cardi B versus Nicki Minaj, I think it's kind of crazy how Nicki Minaj goes on Turning Point USA and all of a sudden the whole Nicki Minaj versus Cardi B thing becomes, like, left versus right. And I just think that's odd. And I also think it's odd that the right is so accepting of Nicki Minaj, because I think Charlie Kirk himself said that something about female rappers not being, like, good influences on children.
Right now, black culture is being held captive by influences, songs,
Which
and role models.
influences?
I mean, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B.
Okay, Nicki Minaj is causing dads to leave the home.
Hold on a second. I don't think that's a good role model for 18-year-old black girls. I don't think that songs that are talking about, like, glorifying wet female genitalia is exactly, I don't know which one.
And also, I think Nicki Minaj is an immigrant. And there's currently a petition going around to try to get her deported. There's one from Melania Trump and all these other ones. Realistically, they're not going to go anywhere. But they're at least, if you get enough, so let's talk about petitions real quick. So if you're running for office, you get enough signatures on a petition to be able to be on the ballot. With other situations like trying to get somebody deported or trying to get some kind of legislation change or a legislation change looked at or a possible proposal looked at, you have to get X amount of signatures. I'm not quite sure what the amount of signatures are, but you need to get a certain amount of signatures to even be able to present it to Congress. So I think I want to find who the organization was, but there was this organization and gave, like, articles of impeachment, like reasons for impeachment for Donald Trump. I'll find it.
signatures to Congressman Jim Jordan's office. It's going to be a similar process to how we did before. We unfortunately don't have a meeting with his office, so we'll see how it goes, but we really hope that they'll accept these nearly 1 million petition signatures. It's going to be a little tighter, so we'll try and file in as we can. So let's go on. Hello.
Let's go.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Flores-Colty. I'm the campaign director at Free Speech for People. Oh.
Great. Yeah, come on in. Sorry.
So we just wanted to, we're here today just to deliver a petition. We have petition signatures. So we have a group, and we wanted just to briefly drop these off with you.
Absolutely.
If it's all right that our group comes in. Sure. Everyone here who's with us today are volunteers, people who took time out of their busy lives. So we're here to deliver them today to Congressman Jim Jordan, given his capacity as chair of the House Judiciary Committee, which plays, as you know, a central role in the impeachment process. And so with that, we don't have all million petition signatures printed because that would probably be more than your office would like. But we do have, if we can go ahead and open up the box. We do have here a thumb drive that has the nearly 1 million petition signatures we'd like to deliver to you. In addition to that, you'll see the information listed of the 19 high crimes that Donald Trump has committed violating the U.S. Constitution, prepared by a team of constitutional lawyers that's been working around the clock to track all of his impeachable offenses.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you coming in. I'll pass all this along for you. Is there anything else I can do for you here today?
No, thank you for accepting these nearly 1 million petition signatures of Americans across the country.
Great. All right. Well, you guys have a great day. Thank you for coming in.
But I remember that, and then nothing's really happened, right? We haven't heard anything about impeachment. But we have heard that Kristi Noem might get impeached. People have been trying to get her impeached, or they've been talking about it. I'm not quite sure if it's passed the House or if it's actually been presented on the House, but it is in talks. Because after the execution of American citizens by ICE at the hands of ICE, or one American citizen more recently being Renee Good, that kind of stirred everything up. And Renee Good's murder actually had a lot of different impacts. There was 2 people killed by ICE agents in the following days in Portland. There's not much information on them. They said that they were Homeland Security, so they're connected to a gang, but we don't really have much information on them. But Renee Good's murder, even before Minnesota was in the spotlight for a it was a child care scandal. Some YouTuber named Nick something went and was demanding to see the children because this place had $2 million in funding or something along those lines. First of all, if I go to a preschool or a kindergarten or a daycare and I knock on the door with my cameraman, I'm a man, say I'm a man, right? I have another man with me. I'm knocking on the door of a child care center and I'm demanding to see the children. Just any regular person, what do you think? Would you let them in to see the children? Minors actually aren't you need permission to film them and to show their faces and identities for minors. So in order to have them even go in if they wanted to, they'd have to contact each parent, get a permission slip, or they'd have to blur out every single kid's face. And it's just it's just kind of a creepy ask, right? Let me in, I want to see the kids. Who are you? Do you have an officer? What happened? And because of that, unfortunately, Minnesota is seeing their funding being taken away, their child care funding being taken away, their SNAP benefits being taken away. I think Donald Trump even bragged about it at the Detroit Economics Club.
Another urgent priority for bringing down the cost of living is to stop the colossal fraud that is bleeding American taxpayers absolutely dry. The fraud being committed by the Somali population in Minnesota, have you heard of them? They're lovely people, is monumental. And California, Illinois, New York, and others are just as bad. Our country has been losing over $500 billion to fraud every single year, but those days are over. We have the best group you've ever seen assembled going after fraud. In Minnesota, we're cracking down on the Somali scams, ending the brazen and shameless theft of taxpayer dollars.
But yeah, he said he was going to take the funding from Minnesota, and Minnesota's already heartbroken over what they experienced in Minneapolis, and now they just keep getting hit and hit and hit. ICE is there, I think, in the thousands compared to only like hundreds of police officers that they have. And the police are outnumbered there, and people are mad and upset and angry there. And Minnesota just keeps getting targeted by the Trump administration. First, it was the child care thing, and then all funding got frozen for kids and SNAP and other government and Social Security funding as well got frozen for them. And then the murder of Renee Good, and then more ICE being deployed there. But Governor Tim Walz has really kind of like shown a strong stance. But I think it's really obvious to see how hurt like that state is, like reasonably so. And can't believe that they just like keep having to go through these things. Bigger than praying for them, I think just keep paying attention. Keep paying attention to other states that are being targeted by the Trump administration. Unfortunately, Colorado is one. I think we just need to stay vigilant and honestly unify, but that's going to be hard, right? We have so much division in this country. It's hard for one person to be like, unify, and then everyone's going to do it, right? No one's going to do that immediately, at least. It takes a lot of blind optimism, right? To be able to say that I'm one person and continue to say I'm one person and I'm going to keep trying and I'm not going to stop. And if enough people say that, then I think there can be enough to make a change eventually. But I think that we all think we're so different and we use that as an excuse to not do anything, or it's too hard or too complicated or whatever the reason may be. But I think it's important now more than ever to just keep paying attention, because we've seen the government straight up lie to us, and we've seen what they're capable of, and we've seen that the rights we've always known and always had before are being threatened every single day. So make sure you have a little pocket constitution. You can get it at the ACLU website. Any other resources I will put down in the description. But yeah, just a quick little episode for you. I just wanted to talk about a couple things. And yeah, I think I touched on them all. Nice little chat with y'all. And make sure you follow us. We have more social medias. So we have Instagram, Poli-Pop Talk. We have TikTok at polipop.talk. Remember, Poli is like political science, so Poli. And then we're getting a Facebook page started. I don't know how that will go. But yeah, make sure you follow us and like and subscribe. And we will see y'all next time.